Hey guys, TGKS Productions. So I have a Last of Us 2 video for you today, and I'm going to be breaking down and reviewing the next part of the four-part series that I talked about a couple days ago that Naughty Dog is doing, leading up to the release of the Last of Us Part 2, or at least close to it. And the next part of their four-part series, the one that I covered previously was Inside the Story, which was released on Wednesday, May 13th, and the one that I'm going to be talking about in this video, breaking down and reviewing, is the one they actually released yesterday, Wednesday, May 20th, and that is Inside the Gameplay. What I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to do it a little bit differently than I did in the last part of the series, or breaking down the last part of their series, Inside the Story. What I'm going to try to do in this video is I'm going to actually just play the video that Naughty Dog released and then sort of just break it down and review it as we're going through it, pretty much comment on it, give it constructive criticism. I feel like that's going to be a little bit easier rather than trying to, I guess you could say, cut it up and then piece it together. So I'm going to try to do it that way. I don't know if I'm going to do that for the next two parts, but I'm going to try it this way. For this video, this one's actually twice as long as the last video that Naughty Dog put out with Inside the Story, so I think it's going to be a little bit easier to try it like that. I apologize if it's a little bit longer, but I'm going to try to do it like that in this video. I feel like it's going to be a little bit easier to go through this. But anyways, let's get into this. So right here, this is the PlayStation channel. They actually uploaded the entire Naughty Dog video they put together going inside the gameplay here. So there's no other channels that likely have this, such as like IGN or GameSpot. I'm using PlayStation here. Basically, I'm just gonna, we're gonna watch this video. I'm gonna comment through it, give some commentary, constructive criticism as we're going through this. We're just breaking down and reviewing it. So let's get started. Full screen here, just a little bit more viewable.
Under here.
What the gameplay needs to do is immerse you in the world, give you as many interesting actions to survive in this world and overcome obstacles. And obstacles could be infected, it could be other people, it could just be the environment, it could be rushing water, anything that could happen in this post-apocalyptic world.
Are you clean? Yeah.
But more than anything, it needs to put you in Ellie's shoes, that you're experiencing what Ellie's experiencing, making you feel what she feels. Because the more we do that, the more the emotional beats of the story work for us, and the more they work for us in this very unique way that only works in video games.
The gameplay.
So what you're going to see the co-director here basically say is what the director just stated. Essentially, sort of have, obviously it's a survival game. You want to be faced with all these survival challenges, but at the same time, the decision making that Ellie's making, you want to have sort of that emotional attachment there. You want to be feeling everything that she's feeling with the choices that you're making. That's sort of the same thing they talked about in Inside the Story, their last part for the series. And again, that the whole purpose of that is to create that emotional attachment between you and Ellie, and experience that as you're playing through the game. And again, the co-director is sort of going to back that up here next and support what the director just stated.
Play philosophy of The Last of Us Part 2 is putting you in the shoes of Ellie and everything that means. It means giving you a threat constantly, as this world has. It means giving you the hard choices.
Because this game takes place in such a hostile universe and our characters are pushed to do really difficult things, we want to put you in alignment with those choices. We want you to understand how hard certain decisions were for these characters, because they're hard for you.
I would say the overarching philosophy of how we approached designing the game mechanically is how can we take things to the next level.
Everything kind of comes out of the story. And how do we do it through systems? So one is you have to feel the pressure of survival. Survive by the skin of my teeth. How do I use all the scrap around me? Any kind of bullet, any kind of rag, any kind of bottle of alcohol. How do we give you that sense of being a survivor in this world?
This reminds me a little bit of an element, I guess, of Days Gone, as I was seeing her pick up these items, or Ellie picking up those items. Obviously, crafting is also going to be a very important part of this game, and it's going to even get talked about a little bit later in this video.
Ellie is very small compared to Joel and more nimble. How do we make you feel like you're not the strongest person in the room, but you still should be able to rise to the challenge and survive, you know, a fight with a bunch of people that are all bigger than you? So therefore it meant creating a character and systems and mechanics that allow you to be much more nimble. And that's where we added a jump button.
Deal.
In the first game we had a clamber button, but not really jumping. And here Ellie can jump. The combat scenarios are much more vertical, where Ellie can use elevation to her advantage.
So this is definitely very important, because as it's sort of, you know, tying you into Ellie and feeling what you're feeling with Ellie, not just emotionally, but also physically, in the sense that you have to understand that she's a 19-year-old, you know, woman, or a girl, I guess you could say, however you want to classify it as. And you got to understand that a lot of these survival games, especially with Days Gone and the main protagonist of that game, a lot of the times you're dealing with adult males, and even much older than Ellie, where they're physically stronger, they're physically bigger, and more apt to deal with these situations. You know, and Ellie's obviously going to be a lot smaller, not as physically strong, so they have to make sure that, you know, they bring that out in this game and the mechanics, and you're going to have to find other ways to necessarily win a fight, to where you're not going to necessarily be, it's going to be impossible to win a fight, but you're going to have to sort of find ways around that, because again, she's not necessarily as physically strong as, you know, other, I would say, you know, characters with other survival games. And I like how they're also, you know, they're definitely emphasizing that in this game. They talk about adding a jump button in. Again, you know, if you were to compare to Joel's a lot older, not going to be as agile. She's going to be more agile, have a lot more agility there. So jumping, you know, when I guess trying to climb would be, you know, would fit her character more than someone like Joel. I don't know if they got rid of climbing, because they said they had climbing in the last game. I don't know if it's a good idea just to completely eliminate climbing, but I don't really know what they're doing there. But I do agree with the jumping. And again, that sort of adds, I guess, her combat advantage of having elevation. So I like how they I guess, brought out, you know, the uniqueness of her character in the mechanics, and especially with surviving in the combat scenarios. And, you know, they're pretty much the, you know, the members of Naughty Dog here in this video, they're going to go into a little bit more detail with the combat here in the next, you know, with the next couple minutes of this video.
It's a huge, huge one. Prone, obviously, it means to lay flat on the ground. Something so simple, again, something that in real life you'd be able to do. Letting the player have access to all their weapons, all the items, crafting, everything while in that position. And it just creates so many more emergent things in gameplay.
Now that we have this other state that the player could be in, which are very low to the ground, how else can we use this other than just hiding in vegetation? We're like, well, there's a lot of man-made things or different structures that have collapsed that allow just enough space for you to crawl under, and which means that now, as enemies are looking for you, you can crawl under things and hide, and it's just one more way to assess your environment and use it to Ellie's advantage. Now, because you can hide under things, we made them smarter and gave them the ability to look under things. So while you might hide somewhere and be safe for a while, eventually they're going to start looking under stuff, and if you're hiding under a truck and they spot you, they're going to yank you out and then try to kill you.
So I like this aspect of combat here. Obviously, they talked about prone a little bit. I know that's important in a lot of different video games. Definitely in a survival game like here, and I believe they talk about it a little bit more coming up shortly. But I like the idea that you're able to hide under different structures in the game, whether man-made or just, you know, natural elements in nature. I really like that. That immerses you, I think, more into the world of the game, being able to use your surroundings to survive in these situations. That is definitely very, very important, and I really like that aspect of this game.
Dodging is a big one, because now with dodge, anytime you're in a scuffle, you have a chance to get away. You have a chance to counterattack. It lets escape be an option as well. Sometimes you just got to run, and that is another part of this world, which is sometimes the threat is so overpowering that you just have to get away.
When you are partially hidden, or you're in grass, that means people from afar can't see you, but people from closer can kind of see you. They will eventually acquire you. You're not completely hidden when you're in grass.
She went into the grass. Watch yourself.
And it makes you as a player become much more aware of your surroundings.
Jump, prone, dodge, all these things feed into both exploration and combat, because it lets us expand the space. The size of spaces can be bigger, the intricacy of spaces can be more complex, and it still works exactly as you would expect.
This is definitely what they just said is very important. So obviously how you, as I said earlier, surroundings, using the surroundings around you are extremely important in combat situations. But what they said there at the end, and also sort of not to skip too much ahead, but I like, what he said with prone as far as the realism there, that obviously, hiding in, I guess, I don't know, hedges or weeds, whatever you're hiding in, obviously enemies up close are going to be able to see you, whereas far away they're not. So I like that realism there. I think some games, obviously, that you just sort of hide in a bush or something, and then you just automatically can't be seen. I don't know. Some games don't seem to do a good job with the realism aspect there. But what I really like what they said at the end there was that obviously being able to go prone, being able to crawl expands the space. So there's so much more they can do with the world. There's so much more detail they can put into it. Because obviously, like you said, not just with combat is that beneficial, it's very beneficial with exploration, because obviously you're going to be able to find more things under different, objects in the world, I guess you could say, that, a video game that wouldn't have that aspect are not going to go that far into that, or not that, I guess you could say, that much depth. So this expands the world greatly, and even the co-director even sort of talks about this a little bit next, which I'll further touch on.
When it came to our level design, we really wanted to challenge ourselves to make a world that really felt like a real space as much as we possibly could, and didn't feel like a series of combat encounters and exploration spaces and then combat encounters that felt like a hall of horrors or something, but something that really felt like a space that you could explore that seemed like a legitimate urban environment. And that pushed us to make our level design even more open than it was in the first game, which for us at the time was pretty open. In this game, we've gone so far in making the level.
So real quick, I want to say, sort of expanding on what he said earlier with being able to, have, I guess, crawl or go prone in the game, expanding sort of the world there, your surroundings. That is very important in video games, because I sort of thought about Grand Theft Auto a little bit, in Grand Theft Auto 5 specifically, just because I have a lot of experience with that game. And the one thing that always disappointed me about that game was you have this beautiful, picturesque landscape, this beautiful city, beautiful, picturesque landscape, but you can't interact with a lot of it. It's just this sort of, it almost looks like a picture, and that's about it. You have all these beautiful, exteriors, these buildings, and you can't even interact with half of them. So you're only really getting half the experience, in my opinion. Whereas, as they're stating here, they don't want to do that. They want to make sure that you can interact with as much of the environment as you possibly can. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, you could have a much smaller map and still be getting just as much out of it as a game as expansive, or I would say as an open world game. This isn't really necessarily an open world game. Keep that in mind. The Last of Us is not really an open world game as much as it is a story game. However, with how expansive they're making this, you're almost getting just as much out of it as you would be with with an open world game. And I do believe that is extremely important and very interesting with what they're saying there, and should be taken into great consideration.
Design open, that there are actually entire story moments, entire combat encounters, like full scripted sequences that you may completely miss. And there are things that we feel like, even though a portion of our player base may never see these things, the fact that when you do encounter them, you feel like you discovered them, it lends them this charm and this magic that I think is unique to games, that, this happened to me because of what I did and what the place I explored to.
So I like what the co-director said there. He said that there's obviously going to be a lot of sequences of events that you may never discover. And it goes back to sort of what they said in the other video, and even in this video as well, that obviously your decision-making is very important. They want to make sure they emphasize that decision-making aspect, that the decisions that you make are going to determine, the outcomes, I guess, that you have. And I like that because it's not sort of just a system that I guess everybody's going to have. You're going to have people, based off of what I'm getting from this, the same player is not going to necessarily have the same outcomes that another player is going to have. A lot of games, when you're playing through the story, it's all the same exact outcomes. With what I'm getting here from The Last of Us Part 2, from what they're saying, is that's not necessarily going to be true. One player might have a certain outcome with a certain situation, and then there may be, your friend that you talk to about this game, and they're like, well, no, I actually had this outcome happen. And that's very important because I think that adds a lot of variation and definitely can cause you to want to replay the game, not just once or twice, maybe 3, 4, or 5 times. It's going to bring you back to the story time and time again, and that's very important because what they actually say a little bit later, I can't remember if it was the director or co-director, you'll see here shortly, but one of the team or members of Naughty Dog says that one playthrough isn't necessarily going to be enough for your character as far as the materials that you're going to find. So that sort of adds to the idea that they want you to go back and play this, not just once or twice, but maybe even more than that. So that sort of just feeds into that idea, and I like that because obviously they're not expecting you just one and done it. I guess you could say play it and that's it. They want you to keep immersing yourself into it. They put a lot of detail into this, which again is very important for these games, and I really enjoy that and I really like that aspect.
Crafting is very much about a payoff to exploration, meaning that when you enter new spaces, you want to look around for supplies. You want to open drawers and cabinets and look for different things that will allow you to craft either items that can help you heal, items that can help you attack multiple enemies at once, such as the Molotov or the landmine that Ellie can craft. Items that can help augment your weapons, like the silencer for her pistol, or craft new kinds of ammo.
It also gives us tons of interesting gameplay choices and overlaps that you can do in any moment and on the fly. We try to be a game that wants you to make a lot of different decisions in combat as possible. And the way that we've expanded the recipe roster and all of the recipes and how they interact with each other is carefully chosen for the different ingredients and making sure that you always have these interesting decisions to make.
We put a much stronger emphasis on the importance of the choices you make in the long term for your character.
It'll be useful.
Through the weapon upgrade system, through the player upgrade system, there aren't enough resources in a single playthrough to fully upgrade your character. The choices that you make, you're going to have to live with, and we wanted to make sure that all of the choices that you made had a really noticeable and tangible effect on the way that you play.
So they mentioned that obviously with crafting there as well, that the decisions you're making in crafting are going to be very important. It adds to the complexity of combat. Obviously, it's not going to just be one way about combat. It's not going to just be guns blazing necessarily. You're going to be able to do it in stealth situations or even variation of different stealth situations. You're going to have a variety of different weapons, a variety of different upgrades. You're going to play into these combat situations and add a lot of variety to them, which I like. And as I stated earlier, obviously that again, the materials that you find and that you craft are going to be very crucial as far as the decision-making process is concerned, because again, you will not be able to fully upgrade your character with just one playthrough. There's not enough materials. So again, brings that decision-making aspect in that they're trying to really emphasize with this game. That the decisions you make are extremely important. It could mean life or death in a number of situations, and I think that really, in my opinion, really adds to a survival game like this, because you want to sort of be as what Neil Druckmann or the director said in the beginning of the video. You want to feel like you just got away, by I forget exactly what he said, like I don't even remember exactly the line he said, but whatever he said earlier, the skin on your teeth or something like that. I don't even know if that sounds right, but whatever he said earlier, you want to feel the bottom line is you want to feel like you just got away barely. You want to feel like you just survived. That really adds the element of survival into these games. So I really like that aspect of it.
You feel a greater kinship with Ellie because you are living with decisions that you've already made. Like you are continuing this through line of her journey through this world, and the moment-to-moment gameplay is influenced by that in a way that we haven't before. The realization that you're choices have these long-term consequences is very much like the nature of the narrative of the game. And I'm happy that the mechanics are supporting that.
All right, so that's pretty much it right there. That is the entire video that Naughty Dog put together talking about the, I guess, the mechanics of the game or the gameplay inside the gameplay. So obviously, again, you know, they are making sure the decision-making gameplay also feeds into the story and brings you closer, you know, and have more of an attachment with Ellie. So I really enjoy that. I really like what they had to say in this video. It gives me, you know, high hopes for, I guess, at least the mechanic side of The Last of Us Part 2, despite maybe people being upset with the story. You know, of course, most people are, I would say, purchasing this game because of the story. This isn't really known as an open world game. It's more of a story game, but you should consider the aspects and the time and the effort that they put into the mechanics, because again, that also makes a game great. You know, this is also a very important aspect of the game and plays into the story. So take that into consideration as well. But in any case, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you for this video. It's the only thing I really wanted to cover real quickly. Like I said, I apologize if it ran long, but I just sort of wanted to break this down and review it. I did it this way because, like I said, it's a little bit easier than slicing the video all up and then trying to piece it together from there. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting and beneficial. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video. Be sure to comment if you have any questions. And as always, have a great day.